Hey everybody, Alexandra here again. I just got a note that maybe you couldn't hear me. Just double checking our audio before we officially begin. 1 second, please. Bear with us. Okay, great. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to go through one more time and share that I'm Alexandra Wieland, Director of Consulting Ops here at Shift, and I'm so excited to share this subject matter with you today. And really, this was a topic that you all said was important. So when we polled audience after our listeners last year and said, what else do you want to learn? You came back to us and said self-awareness was very important, accountability was very interesting to you, as was coaching. So we have tied those three elements together to give you this presentation for the next hour or so. But throughout the time, if there's a moment where you have a question, an idea, you just want to share your thoughts, there's the comment section. So please feel free to engage there. And then there'll be a couple polls as well. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. All right. So first things first, what can you expect to learn on this webinar today? Well, it's a couple-fold. The first is the meaning and manifestation of accountability. We hear that term thrown out a lot, and so we want to really define it in our own words and with a little bit of help from other thought leaders in the space. Secondly, we want to touch on coaching, because if this means anything, it's really about taking what you learn here and applying it back in your own world. So we want to define what it is and also what it isn't. And then, of course, why it even matters. And then the third thing you're going to learn is how to cultivate awareness. And while this is directed to a lot of you leaders and managers out there, we have to imagine that this self-awareness piece is just as critical for you, not just your teams. So we really are positioning this conversation to apply in both settings to both audiences. And last but not least, making this really, really sticky, we are going to share with you proven approaches, tips, and tricks to achieve all the three I just mentioned. So what's trending right now in the business world? Here we go. Coaching poll number 1 of the day. Please complete this statement based on your gut reaction. So I'll read aloud. You've got the chance to enter your vote, but effective leadership is either A, can be difficult and time consuming. It requires holding self and team accountable. 3, it demands total self-awareness, or D, effective leadership is all the above. So we'll give you about a minute or two to respond here, and then we will close that poll so we can actually see our results in live time. So give it your best shot. What do you think is true here? How do you react to this statement? Give it about 10 more seconds and then we'll close it out. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're closing. One second. Just trying to see our results here. All right, so I'm going to read off what you all shared with us. So none of you voted 0% can be difficult and time consuming. About 12% of you shared requires holding self and team accountable. And then a large part of you, 88%, said it is everything. All the things on the screen there roll up to being an effective leader. So I'm here to share that I agree with that statement. I'm happy that that's how we responded, and we're going to dive into how do we make ourselves most effective. So first, a quick stat. This is coming from HBR, and it's showing us what is our perception? How good do we really think we are? So if you see on the spectrum of 0 to 100, coaching ability percentile, unfortunately, where we think we are and where our folks think we are, there's quite a bit of a discrepancy here. So this was really focused on sales leaders in this particular case, but we ranked really high for ourselves, saying 79% were really great at our coaching. And yet, asked the same question, folks who report up to sales leaders said, we have a lot of room to get better. So just be thinking about that. This is all coming from Fortune 500 companies. And then what do you think about your own abilities? What do your people maybe think of you as? Where do you have room? All right, another stat coming your way, actually a few here. So this is based off a couple of things, but if you see that big one in the middle, 50% of employees said they quit a job because of a bad manager. And then we go a little deeper and we talk about, do we think that managers are promoted prematurely? Do we think they need more training? And the long and short of it is, we definitely have a gap between the best we can be. So the argument here is how pivotal when you are in a leadership role, when you are entrusted to guide others and are responsible for other people's performance and giving them feedback. Well, this really matters. It can make or break how engaged somebody is, whether they stick around, whether they want to be with us long term. If you have any reactions to some of these statistics we're sharing with you, again, we invite you to post it in the comments, and we'd love to interact with your thoughts on this. Now, I mentioned that part of today is really talking about the value of coaching, which is different than some other tools in the toolkit. But this graph right here is showing us that engagement and commitment is really impacted by our ability to coach and develop others well. So if you see on the far left, all the blue bars, it's saying that everyone from the bottom 10% of leaders to the top 10% of leaders, well, depending on your coaching ability, is how engaged your people will be. Same goes for commitment. So it's not enough to just be like, hey, I show up, hey, I'm engaged, I enjoy what I do, I'm passionate about the work, but do you stick with it? And actually, we see lower scores overall, but the case is still made that coaching is a valuable skill that we must be deploying and really honing as time goes on. All right. So we're going to hit pause on that piece of the conversation and really start to dive into what we mean by accountability. So love this quote. Pulled it from Inc. magazine, and it says, successful teams have solution-focused people, people who not only care, but they take care. And so this is just one component of the 7 truths that Inc. wrote about. That first truth connected to this quote is, accountability is the difference between success and failure. Now I want to share with you the other 6, and that's right here. So accountability is the difference between success and failure. So what did they mean by that? Well, think of it this way. The told you so moments occur if folks aren't accountable. Then things go wrong, and then they retreat to being the spectator as things fail. So when we're talking about whether we're good at accountability and holding others to it, it's a matter of, do people own the mistake? Do they own when something goes awry? Do they speak up and say, hey, I made this commitment, but now I actually have to go back on it because? That's what we mean by the difference of success and failure, and offering a solution in that absence of things going according to plan. They don't just sit there and watch. The second truth here was accountability starts with you. So that might seem obvious, but depending on the thick of things that you're in, maybe it doesn't. And so again, the article is talking about modeling behaviors you want to see. We talk about that all the time at Shift. If you want to see more of something good, you need to exhibit it so that others know what that looks like. You are accountable. Again, whether the organization fails or wins, that's all about that success and failure is tied to you too. So you can't create distance from it. You have to lean into it and be like, yep, I played some sort of role. This is especially critical for your folks to hear when you're in positions of power and influence. The fourth, accountability is not a one-time thing. I literally just got out of an interview and someone was talking about becoming their best self and how they don't just do it, 3 days a week or Monday through Friday. If they're really committed to becoming the best version, then they have to be consistently doing it day after day, whatever it is. That fifth one here applies to one and all. This is all about not playing favorites. So imagine for a minute you're a manager. Maybe you lead a team of 5, 10, however many it is. Are you only investing more effort in some and not other people? And that's not okay, because actually everybody needs your commitment and your support. It's just how you do it. It needs to be different for each person. The sixth, accountability cannot be delegated. This is a really critical one. So while you can assign projects, you can invite others to volunteer for initiatives. You might, expect that, hey, this person's role means they have these duties. Well, again, accountability actually starts with the individual. So the best way to get people to accept is to empower them. And what do we mean by that? Is setting themselves up for success. It means that if the people know and believe that what you've assigned or what you're checking in on could actually work, then wow, they already have more of an emotional attachment to it. But that means you have to be somewhat accessible in order for them to check in along the way. And that really speaks to the seventh bullet here, which is holding people accountable. It's not enough to say, hey, you're on this, and then just take your hands completely off the reins. It's really finding moments where you're going to check in deliberately, because it serves 3 purposes. It reminds them they will be held accountable for their activities. It gives you the opportunity to provide support in case something goes awry. And last but not least, it offers you the opportunity to give praise and encouragement when you do see that behavior you want. So I know that was a lot coming at you and not a lot of visuals in between, but if you boil it down to this, it's being consistent and clear on your strategy for how to implement and validate that accountability for your team and for yourself. All right, so we've talked about accountability. Great, that's important, we know that. However, if we took the example of New Year's resolutions, we just got done Q1. Maybe you remember what you sat around clinking glasses over saying, hey, this is what I'm going to set my goals to this year. We're here to tell you that according to Business Insider and a lot of other sources, too many of us, or too many of our resolutions, 80% of them, we quit on them by mid-February. So I can't see your hands, but certainly send in the chat. Are you one of those people? And it's fine if you are. It means you're human. But we have to ask ourselves, why? Why do we fall back on the commitments we made for ourselves? Whether it was losing weight, running a marathon, writing a book, being present with your kids, what could be behind the reason that we quit? So we're here to tell you this. At Shift, we show this model often. It's called our achievement model. And we do believe this is a driver of accountability. So you're seeing just some of an overall triangle. So let's just start with what's on screen. So at the top, we have results. I'll take the example of running a marathon. I haven't run one myself. I've ran only a half, but I am around a lot of folks who are totally inspired to be really physically fit. So if you ever need to talk about running, talk to someone at Shift, because they've likely done a race or two. So anyway, the point is, all right, so my result is I'm going to run that marathon. But each person you speak with probably has a different way of approaching it. So their process might be, I get up at 5 a.m. and I just go through the miles each week trying to accrue more. Somebody else might go more from a dietary standpoint and say, oh, well, I need to cut out all these extra ingredients in my world in order to be my optimal self. Maybe somebody else combines those two. Maybe someone else hires a coach. The point is, we know what the goal is, and we have different ways of getting there. But again, what's behind the giving up halfway through February? It's the mindset. It's why did you do this in the first place? So whatever it is in your world, maybe it's some project that you assign somebody on your team and they know it's important. They know it helps contribute to the bottom line. They know that the customers said they want this, but yet they're hitting roadblocks or they're not showing up in the way you want. It probably has something to do with mindset and the reasons being. So when we think about the why, it really stems from this place of belief. So we all have these. Each of us was raised in our own way. And so our individual experiences definitely have an impression on the way we think about our world. And that's not to say it's good or bad, it just is. But then it comes down to, there are two ways to go about things. When I have that project and I know the deadline's in 8 weeks and I'm really nervous about it, am I going to rely on past experience, previous experience to tell me, well, gosh, I didn't meet that deadline before, so that's likely going to be my outcome again. I might as well quit while I'm trying and see if somebody else can take my slack. Or is my belief a little bit different, a little more outcome-focused, positive-based, and I'm going to make a future choice for a different result? That's where you can really help folks be accountable if you can uncover this awareness for themselves and certainly for you. So again, if you've got questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear them, but we're going to keep moving along here. So coaching. So we've talked a little about accountability. Now we're moving on to this vehicle of coaching. Like, what actually is it? And we want to start with another poll. So how many months do you think is necessary to invest in a person in order to see positive results? And we offer you a couple options. Could be a month or less, 2 to 6 months, 7 to 12, a full year, or then some, or is it something else? We want to know what you think it's going to take in order to see those positive results. We'll keep the poll open for just a little bit. See things ticking up here. We'll give it about 10 more seconds. See if anyone else comes through. Okay, we're going to close on out here. All right. So the outcome was 24% of you chose the first option, a month or less. And then 22% said it's going to take up to 6 months. The largest category, you all voted 33%, 7 to 12 months, and then we trickled down for 18% at 12 and 2% for other. So let's hang here for a minute. The fact that most of you said 7 to 12 months, you're on the money. So we pulled this together from an HBR study of 140 leading coaches who report typical duration of coaching takes as many as a little over half a year to a full year. And so that's really important because when we think about seeing those results, what kinds of conversations do you have, how open people are going to be to the conversation in the first place, you need to develop a little rapport and trust, right? And you're not going to have the same personality every time you work with. So just know that if you are invested in coaching someone, it's going to take time and effort. All right. So now that we agree accountability is critical, the next question we have to unpack is, again, how do we hold folks accountable? Not as simple as it looks. Yes, coaching is the vehicle, but exactly how? But first, we wanted to share with you just a couple of stats here. And so I'll be in the background sharing with you that if we just go back in history to, say, the 90s, early 2000s, companies would typically engage coaches to fix toxic behavior at the top. But we've seen a shift now where the focus is not about that as much as it's about developing capabilities of high potential performers. And so everything we do here at Shift is speaking to that, which is we're trying to shift engagement, we're trying to shift performance. We're acknowledging that the answers are within. It's just about tapping that potential and really guiding it in a positive direction. And each of you have that ability to do so. And what you see here, let's just take the smaller stats. When we consider almost 90% of this group values career growth, they're talking about the millennial generation, who is making up most of our workforce already. And what this article from HBR uncovered about this Gallup study was the fact that Unfortunately, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. Back to what I said earlier about you are working with different personalities. So meeting people where they are and tailoring your words accordingly or approaches is super critical, which is why we're going to share different exercises so you can pick and choose and experiment to find what works, what resonates. So I shared that we would be uncovering the difference between coaching and certainly defining what it isn't. So this is a visual that's showing where there's some overlap, right? There's aspects of consulting and therapy that fall under coaching, which is why probably it gets a little bit confusing as to, well, when do I need a coach? Or what is a coach? Or, well, I thought I was coaching, but maybe it really wasn't. So pausing here and just letting you absorb what's in front of you, I'll just call out a few things. So if we thought of consulting plain and simple as I'm telling you the answer, I'm backing it up with data. You're paying me for that insight. Put that on a shelf. And then therapy is going to be, we're going to go down the past. We're going to figure out the reasons why, and I'm going to diagnose maybe some dysfunction, something that's broken, and maybe prescribe new paths. Okay, so then what does coaching really separate itself from? It's all about the future. It's about asking good questions. It's about really recognizing that you don't need to tell somebody what to do. They know it, you just need to draw it out with them. And I'd say, even though it's not represented here, the critical piece to all of this is, as someone's coach, it's patience, right? It's intuition. It's really having a great self-awareness so that you can go into that conversation fully present. Just a few more things to hit on because I thought this was really powerful was in preparing for this webinar, did a little more homework and was like, okay, so what do sometimes people confuse a coach as? Well, sometimes we use it interchangeably with mentorship. And Cheryl Stein, a member of Monster.com's career coaching team, she said, well, mentors take experience and they teach someone who's more green. But coaches don't need to be experts in other businesses. They just need to be expert in asking those right questions to get clients to see things differently. And those questions will work whether you're a farmer, a dancer, an accountant, an executive, an individual contributor, and so on. So just something to chew on there. Okay. So this is the first view of multiple tools that we'll share with you today, but these are two of our favorites here at Shift. So what you see on the left is 15.5, and perhaps some of you already use it or have at least heard about it, but we love this tool. It's a performance management platform. It's super user-friendly. There's a web version, there's a mobile version, but it gets its name from the fact that 15 minutes is all it takes for somebody to actually fill out their week's report. And then it should take only 5 minutes for a manager to review someone's input. And so what are they inputting? Well, if your team is filling out their 15.5, it would mean something like this. First, they would be able to rate how they feel. So that's that graph at the top in green that's showing on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm feeling a 4 today. And you might get prompted to expand on that. Well, tell me exactly why. What would make it a 5? And then there's also a chance to state your top 3 priorities, not 25, 3 of them, so that your manager can quickly understand, well, where are you focused and how can they best support you? Another aspect of this weekly report is a chance to pose questions to your team. So that's the beauty of 15.5, it's very customizable. So if you're preparing for an upcoming team meeting or you want an update on a project or whatever it is, you can start to craft the questioning to get into the hearts and minds of your folks. And last but not least, probably one of our favorite aspects of the tool is the virtual high five. So science has shown that expressing gratitude actually releases hormones in the body that make us feel good. So it can almost sound like it's self-serving, but really it's a chance for you to acknowledge the good work that others are doing. And our encouragement is be specific. Like actually take a value of your organization and say, I saw you doing this, and it was really wonderful to see you living that value. So there's even more functionality to 15.5, but we can always have a conversation about that later. On the flip side, to the right here, is our diagnostics. And so we partner with TTI, an organization that has been studying first folks in sales, but it's really expanded over the years to just about any industry and any role. And so these are quick snapshots of a few types of reports that they can output. And the beautiful nature of this is there's applicability across the employee life cycle. So while we're talking about helping invest in your existing team and developing them further, this is also a tool for recruiting and certainly along the way. So it tells you everything about how somebody ticks, from the way in which they operate to what lights them up, certainly their intrinsic motivation, and certainly their own toolbox, their competencies. And then it gives you some understanding of how people operate in times of stress and not. So if you'd like to know more, we highly encourage you to send us an email, and we'll take the first 5 of you and let's set up a one-on-one phone consultation with me, and I can dive deeper with you about why we love these tools so much and how they can help you. All right, perhaps my favorite piece of this entire conversation might have something to do with the fact that I'm also wearing mala beads like the woman in this picture. In my own life's journey, I actually credit Shift for this one. This is a place that pushes, but in such a healthy and amazing way. And so what it led me down a path of was not just professionally getting better as somebody in role, but really exploring who I am and who I want to become. And that was that chance for me to be in this supportive, driven environment that said, go pursue your dreams. So I'm coming to you not just as a management consultant, but also as somebody who's gone through some yoga teacher training. So forgive me if that sounds like mumbo jumbo for you. I'm going to try and swing the tide to share a few things, but just know that self-awareness is key, whether you're a yogi or not. And so I love this quote because Dr. Luciani puts it really, really starkly. So imagine for a minute, you're driving in the dark and you don't have the headlights on. What could happen? So if accountability is the destination, the coach is the driver, aka you. Self-awareness is not just your headlights, it's your GPS. It's the gas in your car. It's all the pieces that make that car go. So technically, we can all keep driving without our headlights on. But unfortunately, if we keep them off, the chances are even higher, the risks are that much more that we're going to have a collision. And that might look like an explosive conversation. It might look like a missed deadline. It might look like you've burned yourself out and didn't even realize it. So raising our awareness is shedding that light, not just on destructive behavior, but our habits and the way we think. So for the rest of for the webinar today, it's really sharing more concepts, more exercises with you, so that as the driver, or really the coach, you're seeing that menu of options. And we're not saying do this one, not that one, or try this one first, but try this one third. This is really a menu for you to choose and see what works. All right, so the 3 brains. You've probably heard us talk about these, whether in promotion or maybe working together already, or at least you're cognizant of the first one, right? We all have one in our heads. This was really the cornerstone of our second bestseller, Shift the Work, where we talked about the neuroscience of business. And as our mission of shifting engagement, well, it's really this belief we have after doing a lot of research and talking with a lot of different professionals that in order to be fully engaged in anything, it's activating all 3 parts of ourselves. So to dive a little deeper in, what do we mean by the brain in our heads? Oh, first of all, there's 86 billion neurons in there, and they're firing electrical impulses, they're sending signals, there's interaction. But if you just thought of it as like, this is your logical self. It's the one that sets priorities. It's the one that helps you learn and think. It's where we make and store memories. It's pretty important to have, right? How many of us are negating these other 2 parts of ourselves that are there all the time? So the head in our hearts, the brain in our hearts, this is like the passion center for you. It actually is the biggest electromagnetic field in our bodies. Just think about when you hug someone you love, or you haven't seen someone in a long time. You hug heart to heart for a reason. There's this energy flowing through each other. And so, yes, on a biologic level, it pumps our blood, it transports nutrients, but it's so much more than that. And you think about somebody with a broken heart, there's a little glimmer missing there. And last but not least, the gut. Fascinating place, lots going on there. It's the microbiome with all this good and bad bacteria that's interacting. And so while 70% cortisol is produced during times of stress in that same region of our body, and 70% serotonin in our body is produced here, which helps us think more clearly, the important thing to note is, so how closely are we listening? Just think for a minute, you're preparing for a big presentation, or you're getting ready to go on a trip, or you're about to have a difficult conversation. Maybe you experience butterflies because there's some genuine excitement, or maybe you're experiencing some sort of gut-wrenching, like, there's almost like a topsy-turvy nausea happening, and both are very real. So again, back to this idea that in order to cultivate self-awareness, just paying note to all these centers of our body is really, really critical. So moving on to an exercise. Yes, I mentioned the yoga. So on the right, you see someone in Sukhasana pose, which is just, crossed legs. But what you see on the far right are these colorful images that are representing what we call chakras, or energy centers. And so whether you believe in the yoga tradition or not, that's not what's important here. It's just the fact that there's a chance for you to tap into yourself even more. So one exercise we'd offer as a way to develop more greater self-awareness is to meditate. We hear about it a lot, right? And some of us probably make up a story that, well, gosh, I don't have time, or I can't find a quiet space, or I don't know how. So we're here to share with you, here's a how. Here are 8 simple steps that we blended from a couple different areas, but the point is we're just picking one spot to focus on. So if you were to find a spot that you could find quiet, you could find a place to sit comfortably, and then you don't put the pressure. Number 2 is setting a time limit. Very realistic. If you're not an avid meditator, I recommend no more than 2 to 5 minutes. And that might not sound like much, but trust me, consistency is the key here. And then that third piece is locating your third eye chakra. So that's that space in the dark blue right in the middle of the head. It's actually between our eyebrows. It's called the anja, or the eyebrow. And it's this place where it's the center of intuition and foresight. And it's driven by a principle of openness and imagination. So if that became your focal point, imagine that now, okay, I'm quiet, I'm comfortable, I'm focused on this one spot, and now I have opened myself to notice more. So part of meditation is really just being aware of what else is going on. Internally, with your 3 brains, externally, the sound and feel of your breath. And maybe you go so far as to pick a mantra. Some people call it an affirmation, a simple word or phrase that will help you just get in tune with the body. So it could be, I am powerful, or I am strong, or it could be something entirely, patience. One thing I'd like to note here is we said exercise 1 is meditate, not be mindful. And so we actually interviewed somebody, Emily Fletcher, the CEO and founder of Ziva Meditation, on our podcast, and she does a really good job of describing the difference between mindfulness and meditation. So first off, think about meditation as it's like food. We're using it as a catch-all to describe any inward practice where you close your eyes. But just like we enjoy chocolate, we probably don't enjoy it quite the same way as sucking down a chia seed smoothie, as she puts. So again, meditation and mindfulness can impact the brain and body in different ways. If we thought of meditation as passive, it's a practice that is all about giving the body deep rest so it can heal itself of stress. Mindfulness is a little bit different. It means that we're utilizing deliberate focus to increase your consciousness and appreciation of the present moment, as opposed to finding fulfillment through external objects and activities. So it's much, much more active, and it's concentrating on details of the environment. So I know I said, okay, so notice your body, notice your breath, but that's just for a little bit. And then it's really letting yourself be. And your thoughts are going to flood in and flood out. Your sensations will as well. So that's about the suspend judgment. That's about detachment. That's about really letting go and just being here in the now. And then the key to all this is repeat. Make this routine. Come back to it often, because that's when you'll really find the benefit. All right. Maybe something else would speak to you more, which is why we offer this second exercise of reflect and review, a little more active than sitting there and feeling like, wow, I'm not being productive right now. What else could I recommend to somebody who is really struggling with something and I need them to be more accountable, or I'm feeling restless myself? Well, for all you checklist and to-do list makers, maybe this will be the thing for you. So this is 10 questions we developed to really raise awareness, and I'll just pull out a few. So 1, what am I thinking right now? 2, when do I manage my emotions well? 3, what's going to come easily? What's in my way? And last, why is this important to me? We recommend you answer all of those. And then it's about how open are you to sharing them. So again, in the context of maybe you're in a one-on-one and you are feeling like you're at a loss of how to help this person see that they need to show up differently. Maybe saying, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you fill this out? And then the next time that you've got some clear headspace, let's come back together and I'd love to hear some of your answers. Not share them to me, email them to me, get it by X date. Keep it very open-ended and see what comes of that. So a final exercise related to this first concept of the 3 brains is giving radical candor. So we've talked about meditation, we've talked about a checklist and really sort of like that active journaling and reflection, but this is about, okay, you've gotten inputs from your team now or from yourself, but what's the feedback loop? What's the way that you're going to hold folks accountable? And it's really giving radical candor. So we pulled this from an article on Quartz.com. They're affiliated with Atlantic Media for those in the area. And it's talking about the single most important thing a boss can do is focus on guidance, giving it, receiving it, and encouraging it. And guidance, which is fundamentally just praise and criticism, is usually called feedback. But I don't know about you, sometimes when I hear that word, I still have a reflex, a response to it, and it seems like it's a little bit, maybe there's some negative tone to it. And so guidance to us is something we all long for. That's like a positive. So we want to encourage you to express and try radical candor, which is a type of guidance the article discusses. So if you're looking at this grid here, there's 2 axes. There's the caring personally and the challenging directly. Caring personally makes it much easier to do the next thing you have to go do, which is maybe go piss somebody off. Yes, I said it. Sorry, bleep, it's out, but we want to get to that top right where you really give immense care for that person, but you are willing to share that constructive, raw, direct feedback in order to make them better. And I'll give you an example. So again, in the article, it's talking about actually Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. She was in a meeting. Her direct report was giving a presentation, and all the content went very smoothly. It resonated. And so she shared with him after the fact that, hey, I liked what you did. However, I noticed you said a lot. And so he said, thank you. I appreciate that you acknowledged what I did well and moved on. But she wasn't quite satisfied. She said, hey, I know I need to be more direct with you in order to make you better. And essentially what she said was, when you say it makes you sound stupid. Now, we could all argue that that's mean. But what she didn't say was, it makes you stupid or you are stupid. She said, it makes you sound stupid. And so one of the critical pieces of giving that radical candor to someone is to depersonalize it. So if somebody is open to it and you express it in that way, you're already setting yourselves up for better rapport, better connection, higher accountability, and so on. Okay. Believe this is the last poll of the day. Can't believe how fast time is flying. But get back out your mouses and let's vote on, when it comes to effective communication, which cue is most influential? Is it our words, our vocal quality, or perhaps our body language? Give it about another few seconds. All right, we're going to close that poll and see what you all had to say. Okay. So 14% of us voted that words are the most influential aspect of communication. That went up to 20% said voice quality. And then we round out with most of us, 66% said body language. I'm here to tell you, anyone in that 66% was correct. Body language is the most influential when we are communicating with others. So this part of the conversation is really about not just raising our own awareness, but now raising our social awareness. Because let's be honest, if we're going to be accountable, if we're going to be self-aware, well, where is this all pointing towards? It's our interaction with others, and we do it every darn day, professionally and personally. And we actually have a saying here at Shift, effective communication is the response you get back. So we want to talk you through, okay, if you're using certain language, certain body language, certain tones, and you're not getting what you want out of that conversation, maybe it's time to do a pivot. Maybe there's a chance to make a change. So modes of communication, there are three. They're on the far left: inferior, equal, and superior. And then the elements that we just voted upon. So context is everything, right? To be an effective manager, a leader, a coach, we have to master all three of these. And what I mean by that is, say, for example, your direct report comes to you and you had assigned them something brand new. They've never tried this project before. And so they're using inferior words. I don't know if I'm going to have the right answers for you. You know, I'm really not an expert here, and I'm just unsure if this is going to be okay. I don't know if it'll work. Can you help me? And you experience them backing down. Maybe their arms are crossed. Maybe they've got hunched shoulders. You're having trouble hearing them. I would imagine that conversation could go one of several ways. If, say, you also meet them where they are and you actually model the way they show up, what's the likelihood that we're going to get to a good place where we have some decision making and action, because we're both in that camp of, well, I'm just not so sure. No one has instilled confidence because we're coming off as soft and we're very uncertain. But say you go from a superior tone and you're like, I know you can do this, and you've got it, and it's amazing, and don't worry, you're going to be fine, you just need to get it done. That might be so abrasive, depending on the person, that's going to further discourage them and make them feel even less like, gosh, I don't have this. So our encouragement to you is, when you look at this grid, that you are meeting them where they are, and you're never skipping 2 levels of tone. So in this instance, it would be really using that equal space. So the words of we, it's collective, it's inviting, we're having a steady tone. These are all things you can experiment with. Same goes for when people come to you with a lot of firepower, energy, or come depleted, or come steady and diplomatic. It's really being aware of how we show up and how others show up. So, an exercise. If, say, you're coaching someone and you've given them feedback before that you thought was very direct, very candid, and it didn't just click, and then you saw them continuing to exhibit certain kinds of tones or body language that spoke something different than they meant, this could be an exercise you recommend. Making recording habitual. So, ask them to choose a conversation, a topic, a project, something that needs addressing. Then have them record themselves, whether it's their smartphone, their computer, whatever, but have them do it solo. Not like, hey, friend, can I borrow you and will you record me? We don't want the external influences at this point. So this is a solo activity. And then the encouragement is they need to become their own observer. They need to play back what they just recorded. That will allow them to now go and identify something they'll stop doing, they'll start doing, and they'll tweak a little bit. They'll actually shift what they're doing. And so a one and done is not going to cut it. What would be beautiful, but probably not always realistic, is they actually share that recording with you after a few tries, so you can see the progress they've made. But even if they didn't, and they just told you later, hey, I tried what you suggested, and you're like, and I see it's working, wow. So the key is really to repeat until you get to that point that the choice has become habit. One last thing I'll share with you on this is I recently heard that we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. So imagine what we're supposed to use potentially more of and less of. Yeah, recording is a talkative exercise, but it's really all the other senses that are firing on all cylinders to help us realize where we need to head. All right, at least 40% of your everyday activities are habitual. Why did I say that? Why did I share this with you? Well, again, if you have this thought or you feel like you bring this idea of recording to a teammate and they will have this thought, I don't have the time, that seems silly, yeah, maybe I'll try it once or twice. I challenge you to hold them accountable. Ask them to think about if they really care about improving their relationships. Do you care about your productivity? Are you as satisfied as you could be with what you're doing right now? Hopefully they say yes. So what comes easy won't last, and what lasts won't come easy. This is something you can share with them for a little perspective, that everything that we really value in life probably takes the extra effort a little more time. And we know, depending on where we read and who we hear from, anywhere from 21 to 66 days it's going to take for a habit to form. So again, as you're having conversations, as you yourself are exploring ways to improve, just realize that it takes time, but it's worth it. So rounding the bend here, this is the final concept we're sharing with you today, and it's that notion of the empty cup. So by now we've likely realized that cultivating self-awareness takes that effort. It can also be very, very draining, whether you're trying to improve in that area yourself or you're on the hook to help others do so. And so again, addressing all of you in positions of influence, the encouragement is don't forget about you. Don't forget about ways that you can fill yourself back up, because when you're empty, it's going to impact everything. From the quality of your sleep, to your relationships, to how you perform at work, to what you have left in the tank when you come home. So these last 2 exercises will give you additional ways to fill yourself back up and bring others into the conversation so you're not feeling like a leader on an island. All right. So this is called gazing out the window. And the window is really this image here, the Johari window. So for those of you who haven't heard of this before, it's this convenient method used to achieve a task of understanding and enhancing communication between groups. It was developed by 2 psychologists, Luft and Ingham, Joseph and Harrington, and they just combined their names together and came up with the name Johari window. And while it's very popular in self-help books and activities and team bonding exercises, it can be really powerful, again, back to cultivating self-awareness, and when you're working in teams, really uncovering sort of what's behind the way in which we are perceived and how we choose to show up and what we choose to share. So how do you actually use this? So again, there's these 2 axes here. On the far left, the not known to others and known to others, and then at the top, known to self and not known to self. So the idea is you're in a group, and each of you are going to get the same set of adjectives, anything from like able, accepting, complex, confident, extroverted, happy, idealistic, and the list goes on. And so you, subject number 1, you would choose the adjectives, say you choose 10 of them, And you're going to spread them out across these 4 quadrants. So there's certainly some stuff that you are probably really aware of and that you let shine through the open area or arena. So that's the spot that you would be encouraged to fill out, and peers will also select to go in this cell about you. So these are the traits that both you and others perceive. But then you're also going to take adjectives and put them in the next category, blind spot. So only peers would fill this out, not you. It wouldn't make sense because it's what you don't know. And then the third, hidden area or facade, are adjectives selected by you, the subject one, but not by any of your peers. So this is what you just kind of on your own terms believe about yourself, but perhaps you haven't exactly shown that to others. And last is the unknown. So adjectives that neither subjects or peers selected go here. So of that master list, anything that you didn't pick would show up in that category, either because they don't apply or because of collective ignorance of these traits. So imagine again, you've got this quadrant filled out by a blend of what you perceive and what others perceive, and then you have a conversation about it. And the encouragement is that you suspend judgment. You talk about, well, what does that mean to us? How can I best support you? Where am I really surprised? What was really confirming? And again, probably the caveat to all this is knowing your audience. Some people are going to be open to this very vulnerable exercise and some aren't, but you as a leader probably are in tune to what's going to work in the right setting. But we offer this Johari window model as yet another exercise to support the coaching, the increased accountability, the raising of self-awareness. All right, coming around the bend here. Final exercise to share. We love this one. So here at Shift, we use it often with our team and then certainly with our clients. And we sometimes call it affectionately the 5 Bs. It's just easy to remember. But think of this as it's a quick and dirty exercise. It's a quick pulse on how you yourself are doing or how someone else is. So the steps are listed right here and they connect to these 5 areas of life. So if we just take body, for example, that's everything from not just whether you exercise, but it's whether you eat amount, like the right amount, or how much sleep you're getting. It's just how are you taking care of the physical self. Balance, this woman near the beach here, that's referring to how well do you think you're doing in terms of harmonizing your work and your home life, or maybe your community volunteer life, or your friends and family. Like, do you feel off kilter or do you feel balanced? Being, this can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So perhaps you're religious or spiritual or none of the above, but there is maybe a sense that there's something beyond myself. You know, I'm not the only one on this planet. So what is your connection to that and how strong is it? Business, so I'm talking to all of you and you're in your own roles in your own industries. So, you know, how good does that feel right now? Do I feel like, you know, the things that need to get done are getting done, that there's gas left in the tank, that I've got a whole host of ideas on what to achieve next? Are our customers happy? Is my team well? It's just that whole environment, that ecosystem of your business life. And lastly, brains. This is really about, are you a continuous learner? How are you investing in your own knowledge bank and growing that exponentially? So now that I've defined the 5 Bs, these steps will make more meaning, and it's something that we typically do as a solo exercise, meaning say you're all around the conference table and you kick off a meeting by saying, all right, let's take a pulse on how we're feeling. Get out a piece of paper and write down for yourself, what's your rating on a scale of weakest to strongest, how you're doing in these categories. Then you could prompt and say, so where do you want to see some change? And then, because it could be overwhelming depending on where somebody is in life, maybe they want to pick a focus on one, or one really speaks to them. So that would be the encouragement there. Now, taking yourself out of that context of you're in the meeting that day, and the encouragement would be finding somebody to hold you accountable. And it doesn't have to be, oh, you're the manager of Johnny or Susie. It could be, go find a peer to be your accountability partner. It's a little bit of a different dynamic than me conducting your performance reviews and check-ins. But it's that critical piece where somebody else knows now what I feel, why I feel it, and what's important. So that's the chance to share that goal, so there can be that real forge of trust and check-in. And lastly, it's setting that date so that it doesn't slip and then 2 months go by and you're like, wow, I didn't address it. I'm now feeling like I'm even more off balance, or I never get to that book that's been on my bedside table that I never read. So that's the 5 B's in a nutshell of taking a pulse. And this is bringing us to almost a close for the day. So throughout the day, we shared quite a bit in terms of accountability, self-awareness, and the vehicle to all that, which is coaching. But there's some additional resources that influence today's discussion. So maybe you want to read a copy of Shift the Work or Emily Fletcher's Stress Less, Accomplish More. All these resources are going to be sent to you because you joined us today. And so again, we thank you for making the time and being with us. In case it's not obvious, the Shift's Ultimate Intentions Hack, just a quick call out there. It's an exercise, multi-page, that is really a bit of a prompt that helps you reset on your priorities and routines and find some better ones that serve you best. Bonus, we didn't talk about it, but this is another Shift favorite, the 5-minute journal. So they have developed, they meaning Intelligent Change, created this journal. It is meant to be written in every day, and it goes back to the science of gratitude and positive psychology. And so it gives you short prompts to really help you reflect on what you're most grateful for and why and whom and so on. And it can be some really powerful stuff. So with that, I'll mention one more time, we have that exclusive offer of the first 5 of you who want to learn more about these two tools we use often. Give us a shout, send us a quick email at team@shiftthework.com, and I'll happily set up some time for a one-on-one consult to talk more about what these entail and how you can infuse these into your own team and your own work life. This offer does expire, though, after this live webinar, my goodness, and it will not be offered in the recorded version. So send your email soon so that we can hear from you and get talking. I'll end with this, which is really our Shift mantra. It's our way that we have pulled our team together and helps remind us what is really important. But I'll just carry your eyes to the bottom, which is what we truly believe. Everything I shared with you today goes back to this idea of if you help yourself first, if you pour into your cup the better you, that gives way to the possibility of a better us. Think about your team, think about your organization, and really that bleeds into better all, which is the entire, not just company, but the community in which you serve, the clients that you serve, and just this world. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate the time, the partnership, just your investment in yourself. So here are all the ways that you can follow us along, grab more content, and we'll be offering additional webinars as the year rolls on. So appreciate those that recommended that this was a topic they want to learn more about, and we will talk with you later. Take care.